Alright, how's it going, guys? My name is Nelson. Sometimes I go by Moxie on Limitless. So, I want to go over the late night special win that I got. I think it was like last Thursday. So, I decided to go with Mew because I am very used to and very comfortable with the Mew, right? And I just wanted to test it out in the waters to see how it would go. However, I did know that Mew right now was a little bit scared of the Charizard matchup because of obvious reasons. The 330 health is pretty beefy, and as well as the attack even just the straight up attack just knocks you out without them having to take any prizes, right? So that's very scary. Um, and seeing in the meta, let me see. A lot of players are playing Charizard, so I kind of had to think about it for a little bit and go off on a different route. Um, Late night, I think it was like a late night where Ricardo Totti was playing the Salgor, and that gave me an idea to play it into the deck, right? I just didn't like the Fusion Strike reliability on it. I wanted to go back to DTE because of the Path of the Peaks, right? I think that Path of the Peak is very strong right now against the Charizard. So like if you look at the win percentages, you're going to see that Genesect and Mew goes up, as well as the Arctinas, and as well as the Lost Box Tina, right? The Path and Judge and Iono, I'm not going to say it destroys the Charizard, but it makes it really hard for them to know what to do, especially with people who are a little bit more less known or a little bit used to the matchup to go up against that. They don't know what to do. You as a Charizard player has to kind of prepare yourself for it, right? Like putting down fire energy on one of the bench Charmanders or do something like that to like that way if you draw into the next card, you're more likely to draw into that fire energy and get off an attack, right? Because this this Mew this Mew matchup that I had or the Mew that I had seemed very um transparent. Like once I get an Alcelgor hit off, once I get an Alcelgor hit off, if you have another Charizard on the bench, it's kind of hard for me to deal with that one, if you know what I mean. Because for me to even deal enough damage to the Charizard, I would need at least the 4 tablets, and I don't even think that's enough, right? Because I'll be hitting for what, 220, 220, 250, 280, 310, right? So I'm not knocking out the Charizard. I kind of rely on this Elsevier. So I need kind of like a backup plan. So my plan was to make DTE Mew a little bit more better, right? I used the path because you're able to use the path a little bit more. Um, and then you can either start knocking out their small things first, like their RCSs. You can knock out their Pidgeys, Charmanders. Once you have 2 prizes left, uh, it kind of is hard for them to get you with the Charizard. They might knock out one of your Mews or whatever, but the Alsalgor just comes in and cleans it up, right? That's the idea of the Alsalgor. Because the Alsalgor does 120 damage. That is 240 on the Charizard. If you use 2 power tablets, you're now doing like 360 damage, right? So that cleans up a Charizard. You can also do it in the very beginning, depending on the board state. Or if you see that they're not getting the other Charmander fully prepared, right? So this is just a very straight DTE Mew, right? With the 3 paths, which is amazing. The Lost Cities, great if you start seeing a lot of more Gardevoirs and Champows. Um, the only thing I would probably change in the list is maybe the 3 bosses orders. I might cut back down to 2 because sometimes in the early game you don't want it. Sometimes I'll throw it away with the Ultra Ball. Sometimes I get rid of it with a vacuum. It's just dead in my hand sometimes. So I feel like 2 is good enough. The Pal Pad makes it to where you have 3. You know what I mean? So I might either get rid of the boss orders and put in an Avery if I start seeing more Gardevoirs and more Lost Boxes. I might add another Judge. It kind of all depends. I think 3 Iona is just fine. I want to experiment with a Roxanne at one point, but I think that Iona is just fine right now. So this is the list. My matchups were against Charizards, right, in the tournament. And my game plan was Path, Judge, knock out small guys, like I mentioned before, and then hopefully clean up the Charizard. Or sometimes they can't even get the Charizard out. Sometimes they'll just be dead in the water because their Pidgeot can't get what they need, and the Charizard can't get the fire energy from the deck, right? So sometimes they're just dead in the water when you have to pass out, and that's what I feel like is very important. I've seen some lists play auxiliary just to get the Tower of Waters out to bump your path, and that's how you know how much they hate the path. Um, and sometimes I'll even power up the Pidgeot to get rid of the path. But again, that wastes a turn for them. So right now, from what it's looking like, Charizard is dropping off a little bit. in the well, not now, but they will start dropping down a little bit because of the fact that the skill level still needs to be there, right? Charizard might be falling off, but I do see Chen Pao and Loxbox Tina start going up in the ranks because they are able to deal with the Charizard and as well as other stuff in the meta, right? That's the thing that you got to keep in mind is that even though a deck does really good against Charizard, it still has to hold itself on to everything else. So like, let's say you decide to play Terra with Eagle Press. It goes 50-50 with the Charizard, right? And it does really well, but it still loses to the Lost Box. So that's one thing you got to think about. So if you're thinking about playing a Mew deck, this is a good deck to go with, right? Game plan is just Mew. Get as much stuff out as you can. If you run into a Spirit Tomb, because there are some people like the artist Tina, I was going up against, I think this one. They were playing a Spirit Tomb, right? Because Mew is still a threat, even though it's going to be falling off a little bit. If you start seeing that, when you start seeing the Spirit Tomb, that's why you still have the Fusion Strike energy you can put on a Genesect or something like that, right? You don't need the Salgor as much, so now the Fusion Strike energy just acts as a way to start drawing. Um, and then you have a lot of bumps in case they start putting down their paths. You got your vacuums and you got your velocities, right? I want to make a, a full guide on Mew and how to deal with the current meta, right? Better, but this is just a first kind of look. I just want to push this out so that way people can see my thoughts about El Salvador um, and against Charizard primarily, right? Um, this is a good deck. I feel like this will stick around for a minute. Um, just give it a whirl. Uh, this is what I think. This is the deck I like. So thank you guys for listening.